for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. And before we get into your new material, I want to cover what we lived through for the last 3.5 years or so, which has been this pandemic. How did you survive it, and how did it change you?
Well, I would never imagine in my age to become a professor at Berklee. So that's what happened after COVID pretty much. So I used to live in LA having like a career and building different projects. But in 2021, I got this offer from Berklee, so I moved to Boston. And during the pandemic time, I spent most of my time in Tbilisi, Georgia, here with my parents, family members. So it was nothing was happening good in US, so I was in between. And it's actually, I feel COVID for us was done last summer, kind of, when kind of everything went back to normal, new normal.
Yeah, yeah. So does it feel good to have new material out with the songbook? How does it feel to have a new album out?
Well, I had these arrangements done a while ago, back in 2017, some of them. And after these arrangements, I made my first album, which was very different than this. It was microtonal music with David Fusinski, who was my colleague. I mean, who was my professor and after colleague. And we had a session together with Jack DeJohnette in his micro jazz project. And because of I do a lot with music with a lot with folk. My music is heavily influenced by Georgian folk music. I made this kind of a fusion-ish micro jams album. But I did not have much success because it came out right on 2020, 28th February. So it had a lot of reviews, but I could not keep with this. So it took some time, and I started um, you know, making this like trio project, playing in a different venues, and finally I decided to record in Paris with Francois Mouta and Raphael Panier. Raphael Panier was my classmate at Berklee, and after we both moved in New York City while I was doing my master's at Manhattan School of Music. So I decided to record with these crazy great musicians, and I got the deal from the label Pee Wee Record. It's from Paris. Vincent Mahe is the head of the label. It's a relatively small label, but they have done lots of projects with the jazz musicians. Current new musician who is Monty Alexander just joined the label recently, and they're having pretty good success with the label. And we recorded album. It's like 10 songs. So my idea was to instead of playing American songbook, which we have to do when we're students at school, right? I decided to take these beautiful melodies from 60s, 70s, 80s Georgian composers who wrote amazing music for movies, let's say Georgian Soviet movies by the time we were part of Soviet Union. But of course, it was significant, like difference than different country movies, And why not? I arrange these beautiful melodies and improvise over them. So I arranged them. Miguel Zenon's Puerto Rican Songbook was also one of the idea that when I talked to him once. Yeah, so pretty much the main idea is to promote and showcase these beautiful melodies through jazz trio setting around the world. Whenever I played first time, it was back. I was newly. I signed with a Yamaha. I became Yamaha artist in 2016, and it was such a wonderful fact in my life. And they offered me to present this project, half of the project, let's say. I played these arrangements, and I played my original music, and it was quite success. And after, I whenever I was playing in different venues, like for example, Blues Alley, or in Boston, or in New York, uh, American audience, they loved it because melodies are very beautiful.
So talk to me a little bit about what you hope the listener gets from this album.
Well, I think the purpose, what was, which was that I wanted to showcase these melodies. They will understand, and they will get interested more about my country's culture. Besides us having such a rich polyphonic music, that none of the countries have such a beautiful music. We and I showcase this in the different projects, like for example, Project Voice, or Georgian Overtones, which showcases this beautiful Georgian folk music. Uh, I my plan is with all my projects to show around the world what my country can offer. As Igor Stravinsky said, that Georgian folk music can offer more than any contemporary music.
So how did you get into the jazz? How did this journey into the music begin for you?
It's actually all started in this building where I'm at right now, because I was a student. It was my teacher who showed me Georgian composer Oscar Peterson's music, and it was quite different than I was practicing Bach or Beethoven's music. But I had this weird habit, which was I was always improvising over the classical music. So clearly, I had this improvisation ability, and when I was graduating Tbilisi State Conservatory, I wanted to move in US and change everything, like, because I was writing music, I was playing everything by ear, all the music and stuff. And I applied at Berklee. I got full scholarship, and I moved to Boston. And when I moved to US, actually, I was surprised that jazz music was not like a mainstream that I thought. Because I thought every single person in the street was into jazz, but I was wrong. But no, this is the I decided to learn everything, harmony, jazz harmony, like the way Berklee has this system. And at the same time, I was learning different types of music, such as like microtonal music, playing in the big bands, playing in like singer showcases, arranging for Quincy Jones tribute show, where I was a musical director. And this kind of lifestyle really pushed me to stay in US and learn a lot from different musicians, from classmates. I was really fortunate to have a wonderful um, uh, colleagues. I mean, colleagues now, but like classmates by that time. That I was learning a lot, and Berklee is a school where you meet musicians from all around the world. So I was really excited to study there. But of course, it was not enough. So I decided to apply at Manhattan School of Music, where I had a presidential scholarship. It was all covered. And this is where I mastered more of my jazz education with Jim McNeely, Gary Dial. I had Dave Liebman. I had a wonderful teachers. Plus, being in New York City, you know how important it is for a musician to playing on the jam sessions and meeting all these mecca musicians that I used to just like listen their records, while I was a student, and after I was seeing them in live. Obviously, no, I had this like a freedom than classical music that formed me as a composer as well. And when I moved in New York, I asked myself, what's going to be my voice? What's going to be my sound? So I went back in my roots, and all I do is to do Georgian music and with the different genres of music.
So what was the first live jazz show you ever saw that really blew you away, that inspired you?
It was actually in Georgia here. I think it was Yaron Herman's concert, the live show that I heard, like international artist, and I really liked it. And it was his beginning of career, and uh, mostly the best shows that I heard was mostly in US because there were not that many artists that are coming here. It was that I do remember Marcus Miller's show. It was a Tutu revisited project, and it was amazing when I heard it. But it was more groove and Miles Davis' legacy. But in terms of like a jazz pianist, it was more when I heard Brad Muldown live in New York and Robert Glasper. He was still playing his trio projects. Yeah, but one concert that blew my mind, like I would say, it was Charles Lloyd's concert. I was doing Vedic Art of Jazz Ahead program, which is led by Jason Moran, and he was teaching us some of the selected musicians who won this program. I was the participant back in 2013, and they had a concert at Kennedy Center. And it was a day when I said, clapping is too much. We have to just digest this music and don't clap and enjoying and being in quietness. So that's one of the concerts that I do remember was just spectacular. Also, I had the pleasure to hear Keith Jarrett's one of the latest Carnegie Hall concert.
So in this journey, you educate, you perform live, you record, there's all these aspects, but what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What do you look forward to the most?
So a wonderful question. I think it's just such a complex thing that I have in my head. Um, First of all, I would love to improve in my country the jazz education. Um, and all the information and the experience that I get, now I share at Berklee with my students, but also I would like to take this all the information and bring this to here because I was lacking this information when I was a student as a classical pianist because there were no such a teachers and nobody really knew like with depth. Everyone was like a self-taught by ear musician. So no, one of the ideas definitely to bring American culture in my country, but at the same time, uh, I think would be amazing to all the upcoming projects that I would love to do. It's gonna be promoting my country because Georgia is such a tiny country. Do people know that Georgians invented wine or one of the oldest culture of polyphony comes from us? No, not yet. So I have this all the advantage to bring out the harmony from my country, from my homeland.
So why do you love jazz?
Freedom, mentality, different mentality, and there are there are frames, boundaries, but there are no boundaries at the same time.
Um, so I'm curious.
I think it's very simple. It's very simple at the end. There is freedom. There is something that no other style can give to you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You're obviously international. You're going between Georgia and you're going to the States. You probably have a pretty good view on how strong jazz is these days. And after the pandemic, there was a lot of people that had to reevaluate whether or not they wanted to be a musician or not. What are you seeing here as we enter a new year? How strong is jazz from your point of view?
Because I see this way. In general, education in the world gets less in society. And to understand jazz, you need to have intelligence. You need to have quite enough musical background to understand forms, harmony, and because of the pop music now is taking over everything these days, um, and other genres, jazz music is the in US. This is my uh, understanding that um, jazz audience is getting less and less, but it's getting more and more, I guess, in Europe, because there are still more festivals in Europe than in US. Unfortunately, young generation don't go to jazz concerts like as more mature people, and I think this is quite a problem that young jazz musicians have to offer to too young to their contemporaries, music that they can understand, and it's a quite tough job to do, because mm, I would like to see young generation listening jazz music now, but they don't listen that much, and I see this as an issue, unfortunately, in US more. As in the beginning, I mentioned that when I moved in US, I was in the classical music festival actually before Berklee, and the driver who picked me up, I started talking to him about Chick Corea's Jazz Trio album that I was listening over and over. And this guy was like, "Oh yeah, Chick Corea. Yeah, I know, of course, Chick Corea, but I don't know that album." And I was like, "Why don't you know this album?" And I was surprised. And I understood it's not mainstream. But jazz music always will be evolving, because of jazz needs new harmonies. Uh, and I think a lot Eastern European musicians can offer this, or Indian musicians, or people from Indonesia. My mindset is always open, as I understand jazz as freedom, as I said before. So if these boundaries would be more open, I think it can go back to where it was.
Yeah. So let me ask you this.
Or
Everyone, what's that?
please.
Oh,
No,
I'm
please,
sorry,
no,
you
please.
you froze up a little bit. I didn't mean to cut you off. You froze up a little bit. I was just
Is it still? Uh, is
No,
it
we're
still
good now.
frozen?
Yeah, no, we're good
Okay.
now. So I was going to ask you, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, your students, but you ultimately are in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, it's quite a deep question. I'm the mediator. How can I say, the middle person who translates uh, my country's how can I say, musical legacy to the world.
Yeah,
And this is how my friends know me, and this is how my students know me, because my all other projects are different than others are doing. It's not because of this is I'm saying it's clearly different, because I'm saying again that my country can offer a lot to the world,
yeah,
musically speaking. So as a Georgian composer and jazz musician, I mean, I call myself as I'm a musician. Um, mm, I can do a lot, and I can bring this culture, and being this person who would do who would do something interesting to the musical world.
Excellent. So the new album is face to face. Where can people pick it up, learn more about you and live shows? Where do they go?
Say again, sorry.
Where can people
Could
pick
you
up
say?
the new album or learn more about you and live shows?
Oh yeah, well, everything. Nowadays we live in more or less in digital world. The album will be released on February 2nd in all the platforms. And I do have upcoming two shows, as three shows total, as city release parties on in January 26th and 27th in Paris. And the most important show is going to be in LPR, Le Poisson Rouge, New York City, on February 3rd, right next day of the presentation. I mean, as soon as the album will be out, people can hear it on February 3rd in live, this music.
Excellent. Hey, thank you so much for taking a minute out today. Best of luck. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.